Ready, set, go. Starting a bike shop, point 2, or 2.0, part 2. Starting a bike shop, part 2. One of the questions that was asked in the comments of starting a bike shop, the original version, was how did you decide the market was actually big enough, and how did you decide where to put your bike shop? So I have a printout of our original business plan, which I think at this point I could probably put online. Like, we're far enough away from this that I don't really care if I put it online or not. So if you guys want to see what that looks like, if I decide to do it, it'll be in the description. How did I decide? Well, loosely, this is the Okanagan. This is Okanagan Lake. This map is not to scale. There is a bridge here that connects Kelowna and West Kelowna. In Kelowna, there's about 100,000 people and a total of 9 bike shops when I opened. That number's actually recently dropped to 7. Actually, it was probably 10, and now it's 8. But anyway, a couple multi-location stores are no longer multi-location stores. They're now one-location stores. At the time, Vernon had 3 bike shops. Vernon, if I recall correctly, is roughly 40,000 to 50,000. Wow, that's terrible. And Penticton's kind of in the same boat. It's probably a little bit smaller than Vernon. I think it's about 40,000 people. Let's see if I can doodle like I'm a car salesman. Nope, can't do it. Penticton's about 40,000 people. West Kelowna and Peachland, I know this number, at the time was a community of 40,000 people. So really, really, really high level. I looked at it and went, if there's 9 bike shops, that's about a bike shop per 12,000 people, 11,000 people. There's 2 here, that's 1 per 20,000 people. And I know West Kelowna had Smith Creek, which is the namesake of the shop, and Rose Valley, which is another popular riding area, at its back door. So I knew a lot of people from Kelowna across the bridge to ride those networks, because when I lived in Kelowna, I had done the same. So I started with that. I sort of just ballparked, these were the communities of my shop. Vernon having a slightly larger population base, but not as much crossover with the community of Kelowna. Had 3 at the time. Penticton had 2. I felt like West Kelowna was underserved. Penticton was, and maybe still is, underserved, but I have no intentions of doing anything in Penticton. It's too far away from home. So I went, all right, well, let's start there. So that's kind of where we got started, was really, really high level. I went, there's a shop per whatever, 11,000 people. Over here, there's a shop per 20,000 people. I also live in West Kelowna. Like, I live 5 minutes from my bike shop. We'll talk about that in a minute on the location. But that was kind of the first part of it. So my whiteboard is magically updated with new information for the purpose of YouTube. To really get into the numbers of how many people ride, that sort of thing, I took the population of West Kelowna and Peachland, combined it, gave me a ballpark of 40,000 people. I pulled some data out of the States that suggested 14% of Americans, which seems high, rode a bike on a regular basis in the southern United States. I'm trying to find the source on here. I'm sure it's buried somewhere in the appendix of this business plan, whatever, not a big deal. Which would give me a total of 40,000 times 14% works out to be 5,300 cyclists. I then reached out to Trail Forks, because my predominant focus was going to be mountain biking, who told me ballpark somewhere between 1 in 8 and 1 in 10 people use the app. So I was conservative and went 1 in 10. When I did that, I found 468 people had used the Trail Forks app between January 2020 and July of 2020, and 434 tourists, which was something like, I forget the radius is set up on Trail Forks at, outside of a 15-kilometer range, had driven to ride Smith Creek or Rose Valley. So that gave me a total of ballpark like 8,000 people, or 9,000 people if I combine the two. But it also told me 4,680 people that lived within a 15-kilometer radius of Smith Creek had rode Smith Creek from between January and July. The other thing I pulled from Trail Forks was that total number of, not this number, but 800 and something people had logged 11,000 rides, which is a lot. So these people that are using Trail Forks are what I would consider cyclists riding 2 to 3 days a week at minimum. I kind of quickly knew that, like, all right, we got 4,680 people, or 4,680, my gosh, 4,680 locals. And then I went, okay, well, how many of these locals do I need to get in the shop to make a go at this? Which will be the next part, where my whiteboard magically is wiped clean and starts again. But all of this data is available. Doesn't matter where you live. Like, Trail Forks exists everywhere in the world. Usage rates might vary from place to place. But I think, based on the data that I took from the States, And then the data I took from Trail Forks, you know, not everyone, this also probably includes people commuting, riding e-bikes, riding flat paved trails, riding along the lake for fun. I guarantee none of those people are using Trail Forks. So I felt pretty comfortable that the number of cyclists I was trying to target was somewhere between 5,300 and 4,680. From there, the next step, my whiteboard will magically erase, and we'll talk about how we got to the business plan. 4,680. So, for those of you that are still following along here, as we drive further and further down the funnel, we had ballpark, you know, somewhere between 4,680 and 5,300 number of local cyclists. And we ballpark 4,300 additional tourists. Now, the important thing to note is West Kelowna is a huge tourism destination. This was a COVID number. The year before, we had over 8,000 tourists. So anyway, we were very conservative in everything here. 9,320 people was kind of our target market. If they spent $37 each, the business would have broke even. Ultimately, I went, well, if we can get 10% of these people to spend $500 here a year, then we're going to break even. If we get more of those people to spend more, then we're going to do better. But I was kind of chasing this number here for me and a mechanic to at least run with me for 6 months, and that was the target number. So I knew there was a market plan or a business plan. I knew we could do it. I knew we could pull it off. And from there, we took the money and ran a business plan, and I'll chat about our location decision once I clear the whiteboard. This is a terrible map. We'll see if Scott can put a proper map in on some sort of overlay. This is the lake. This was kind of the dividing between West Kelowna and Kelowna. This is where, on this side of the lake is where 9+ bike shops was at the time. And on this side of the lake was where there was 2. There's a bunch. I did consider putting my shop nice and close to the bridge because there's a demographic here where every home in this like slice is at least $1 million to $2 million. It's pretty significant. And then the second consideration was proximity to my home, proximity to, like, can I walk to work? Can I not walk to work? Where do I think the population growth is going to be? Which, as we head towards Peachland, there's a lot more open development and population growth I think that's going to happen in those areas. So as we stumble towards Peachland, there's a lot more population growth that I think is going to happen in those areas. So we decided there was one shop kind of like along the highway here on this side, and there was one shop along the highway here on this side. My house is somewhere over here, and then the shop I opened is literally 2 blocks away on Main Street. The reason I picked the location, there's a few. One, it was cheap, it was small. At the time, you know, when I was planning to do $374,000 in business, I didn't leave a huge budget for a lease. So I picked a very small lease based on a small square footage at a low square footage price. I also chose to lease from an individual instead of a strip mall or instead of a big commercial property holding company. And the lease was written in a way where if the whole business folded, I could pay a 3-month penalty, get out of the lease, and not lose my house, my mortgage, my kids, you know, everything that goes along with that. Whereas if I'd signed in a big commercial strip mall and lost the business, they ultimately have a duty of care to mitigate their damages and to minimize those. But you're on the hook for at least those damages of the realtor fee, the missed lease payments, the hassle, some heartache, and you know those damages aren't measured in $2,000 or $3,000. Those damages are usually measured in tens of thousands, and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's where we ended up. The fact that it was on the side of the highway in West Kelowna was just kind of a bonus, I guess. But it was 5 minutes away. There's also what I call gas station theory. That's not really what it's called, but gas station theory, as I call it, dictates you drive for 20 miles and don't see any gas station, and then suddenly you hit an intersection and see 4. The reason for this is if this gas station is further out this way, he'll miss all the opportunity between here and here, because these people, or pardon me, between here and here will just by default drive this direction. And if this one's a little bit closer, half the people will go there, all else being equal. I went, well, if I snuggle up in Peachland, and I'm the first stop because I really did think Peachland was going to be a blowing up area, and with tons of development, and there was lots of development out there. And I figured if I was the first shop you hit as you drove into West Kelowna, my odds of accumulating a lot of that business would be good. And to be honest with you, it worked. What I missed out on was this huge strip of high income, high net worth individuals, and some of them still drive past these two shops to come see us, but I definitely miss out on some of that. The other thing I miss out on by being this far out is some of these people from Kelowna definitely drive to see us now. If we were closer, damn it, compressor's fired. If we were closer, I am positive I would see more of those people more often. So there wasn't a right and wrong choice. Ultimately, I signed a lease based on my comfort level with the price attached to the lease and the exit clause attached to the lease, and nothing more. I could justify a location literally anywhere in West Kelowna would have been fine, but the fact I could walk to work, so my wife and I could have one car instead of two and minimize our overhead, was a bonus. The fact that there was a 3-month cancellation penalty was a bonus, because most commercial leases don't have that. And the fact that it was already, for the most part, renovated and ready to go. Like, it had drywall up, it had, we needed to put lighting in, you know, fixtures, counters, that sort of thing, but we spent about $10,000. Commercial leasing, you pay for the improvements, you can negotiate them in, where the landlord will pay for them up front, and it's, you know, they just kind of bury it in your lease, so you're paying for a portion of it. But it's not uncommon to see a commercial space get outfitted where the business has just spent over $100,000. We did it with 10, so super handy. Hopefully this video was entertaining. I hope it wasn't too educational. If you're going to base it off my research and just want to read through my original business plan, I'll consider posting it. If I've decided to post it, it'll be in the description. If I've decided not to, it won't be there. I'm so far off of it right now anyway that I don't think it's really going to matter if I share that information or not. And yeah, anyway, that's the map of West Kelowna. But anyway, we'll see you guys later. And we wouldn't be a YouTuber if we didn't say smash the subscribe button. Jesus. Give us a dab? A dab. Oh, you sound like what Logan wanted me to do, a dab. The kids like it.